Thanks, Steve. Well, the numbers are in on Obamacare, and it's not looking good, with dismal enrollment rates and more than 5 million newly uninsured after their plans were canceled. It's even mathematically seeming impossible for this law to work by many. Here to break down the numbers is Fox News legal analyst Peter Johnson.
Morning, Elizabeth. You know, Obamacare has become the disease now, not the cure. More politicians are wondering, has this become the new plague, the new poison in America? And Americans, in terms of their sign-up numbers, are equaling the politicians' distaste for Obamacare. So let's look at the numbers.
Sure.
7 million enrollees are needed by March 31st, 2014. Where are we?
Where are we? I heard 2%.
We're at 106,000. Now, that's state and also federal exchanges. Now, how many, what's the percentage? So we're at 1.5% of the March 31 goal.
So
right
at
today.
This point, after all this time, we're less than 2%.
We are.
Goal.
And the Obama administration was hoping for more than 500,000 people at this point. We're at 1.5%. And we heard testimony in Congress yesterday that they only have the capacity at this point, if the system is in fact working, to handle 25,000 people at a time.
On the website.
On the website. So let's see how the numbers will actually work down. In order to meet the federal government's targets, the president's targets, they need about 50,000 people, 49,995 people to enroll every day.
Every day, but their capacity to take that many a day
it doesn't match.
There.
It does not match the website.
Okay.
Now, if you average it out, they have about 2,400 people who are enrolling on average today, based upon where the website is, and there's no assurance that it's going to be up and running by November 30th, despite the SWAT team that the White House has put in place. So there's a crisis of confidence and trust, and a lot of Democrats are running for the hills and running for the doors big time, because they say, you know, I was a big principled Obama guy, but I'd rather return to Congress in 2014, and people are screaming in America, and maybe I better hear what they're saying.
Well, you know what, you're right on point here, because this poll just came out. Here we have, which source of information about Obamacare do you trust the most?
Yeah, this is an interesting poll, and they looked at Republicans, and they looked at Democrats, and they looked at family and friends. Fox News came out number one in a poll of about 1,000 respondents about who you trust to provide truthful information about health care and Obamacare. The president was down at 11%, and Democrats were at like 2 or 3%, and the other networks are at 2 and 3% as well. We also know Quinnipiac and other polls show a trust deficit of the president in America, an 8% trust deficit, which is unparalleled. On one poll, more Americans distrust the president than trust him, largely based on what's happened with his Obamacare plan and his inability to get it up, and these cancellations, which are staggering. 5 million.
5 million people are having their policy canceled, certainly, and then more people enrolling in the state exchanges when they have the chance rather than the federal exchange. But really, what's the next step? Is that number possible? How can they possibly get that 7 million required to pay for the system which they're putting in place?
It doesn't look like it's possible, and it's really important when you're talking about the so-called death spiral. If they don't get the right numbers, the premiums are really going to go through the roof. Access is going to be limited. The next broken promise we're going to be looking at is the president says, yeah, your plan is going to be canceled, but you're going to have a better, cheaper plan. Does that become the next trust deficit in America, in him making excuses about breaking the very first promise? Because empirically, that's not true. It's more expensive, and the care may not be as good.
And just on a personal level, it's hard to regain the trust once broken. Peter Johnson, Jr.
Good to see you, Elizabeth.
I trust you.
Thank you, and I trust you.
That 100%.
Thank you.